Welcome to another episode of Breaking Into Cybersecurity. Today, we're going to have an Ask Me Anything. So, audience questions, highly recommended. We'll be monitoring the questions from our LinkedIn queue, our YouTube queue, and from Twitter. So, today we also have Jerry, who is from Redbeard Solutions. He spoke on the podcast yesterday and shared some of his ideas on what we could do to improve the talent situation. But today is all about your questions. So while we get some questions queued up, Jerry, what are some of the things that candidates can do to better prepare themselves as they start to hunt for their next role?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. I think it's a little bit dependent on whether they're just breaking in brand new or they're experienced folks, but some universal truths would be number one, to make sure that they're active in the places where the folks they want to work with are, LinkedIn being a great example of that. And second would be to work their professional network. Not only who do they know that might be in organizations that they'd like to be a part of, but asking the people they know who they know. That one step removed is a step that people forget, and it's usually the most powerful.
That's a great point. One of the things that is said in marketing is that you need to be where the fish are. So as a hunter, you need to be where the hiring managers are. You need to be where their peers are so that you can talk to them, network them. A great example of that is going to conferences. So the Breaking Into Cybersecurity podcast will be at Black Hat, will be at DEF CON, will be at B-Sides of Las Vegas. So we're going to where the people are. We're going to the conference. We got press passes, and we want to record live interviews there. So, folks, I see Julio, I see Ayers, Swati, all thank you for joining us. And then we have our other fabulous co-host, Renee Small, jumping on.
Hello.
Here she is.
Hey,
Renee, how you doing? It's been a while since we've done a live.
I know, it's been forever. I feel like I'm in live stream. I'm back with a vengeance. I just got off a live, back in another live. So yes, it's exciting. You will likely hear my kids in the background. That's the standard. So it is what it is.
That's okay. That when you run a live, that's what you get. Hey Brian, thanks for joining in. Today is all about our guests. So if you have questions, ask your questions and we will have them answered. Today we have two, as we could see, amazing recruiters on today. So if you have questions for your recruiters, ask them. If you have questions for hiring managers or experienced folks, I'm here. So ask your questions. In the meantime, Jerry just mentioned for some of the folks that are getting into the hunting mode is to be where the hiring managers are. Any additional advice you would give for them, Renee?
I literally just got off a live talking about this. And the target for that particular discussion, that was a tech behind fintech. It was around entry level, like real college grads, folks that are have graduated in 2023. And then I chimed in a little bit about, folks that are coming out for 24 and 25. And that was the number one, my very first comment was to be where the hiring managers are, and knowing that a lot of the young people aren't necessarily on LinkedIn. I was sharing with them that when you're in college, you want to have your LinkedIn profile. We know that you're hanging out in the other areas of, social media, but where the hiring managers are is LinkedIn. So that's one of the points. So I agree 100% with Jerry.
Can I add one thing to that, Renee?
Sure.
And Chris as well. So Chris had mentioned conferences. I was at AFCIA's TechNet Cyber in Baltimore last month. Conferences like that, for those that are interested in potentially in government work, DISA was running hiring on the spot booths. Literally, You go there, hand them your resume, interview, they liked what they saw, they would hire you there. And they've got other events coming up like that. So if you check out, I think it's CISO.gov, but a quick session with our friend Google, I'm sure you can find their site. And they're hiring people that fast.
Such a good point. And they tend to do that. Companies have done that over the years, where you'll have they'll set up the hiring booths and make hiring decisions right there on the spot. So very, very good point, Jerry, and something that I'll make sure to reiterate to the college grads, because that's such a great place, instead of trying to put your resume into a quote unquote applicant tracking system black hole, that you can see and meet with somebody right there, and interview right there. So very good point.
So a question there. So you're going to a conference. Yes, you want to bring your full-fledged resume, but what about bringing like a marketing slick sheet? What are your points of views on that?
I think that you definitely, you have to think about the hiring managers and the recruitment team and what they're accustomed to seeing. And up until, I'm still just seeing resumes being that number one piece of paper that they can compare against other candidates. So while I do agree with a marketing slick, I'm 100% behind that. I love when someone can present themselves in a different light. I would also continue to bring a copy of the resume, because if it's a season, the hiring managers that are used to seeing things in a certain, even resumes, like there was a point at one point, people had a conversation around functional versus chronological. And chronological resumes are the ones that anytime I put a functional resume in front of a hiring manager, they get, it's like 1,000. It's almost like, what is this? I can't follow. Like, where were they at this point in time? So you just want to stick to what hiring managers are used to. And then when you have something additional, it shows additional initiative. And if you know that a company, when you talk about a marketing slick, if you know that a company that you're really interested in is going to be there, and you create something specifically for them, I think that would be a huge standout. But also you want to make sure that you have your regular standard chronological resume that they can look at and see, okay, this person was at this company and this company during these times with this title doing this work. So
yeah, I totally agree, Renee. Reinventing the resume is a losing bet 99 out of 100 times, unless maybe you're a marketing person and you want to show off your creativity. I'd go in a different direction, though, Chris, than the marketing slick. Number one, if I'm going to a conference, I'd have an elevator pitch ready on why they should talk to me. And number two, if you're going to bring something extra, be ready to talk about projects you've done, especially as an entry-level person who doesn't yet have professional experience. If you set up a lab in your shop, you're entry-level, you wouldn't have a shop. If you set up a lab at home, or you've done project work on some of the different sites, be ready to talk about that. Maybe you've got a Google Drive set up that you could bring people to. Obviously, don't bring a thumb drive. And gosh, if a cybersecurity interviewer would put a thumb drive in, you probably don't want to work there. But yeah, that would be the direction I'd go in, is be ready to show off project work.
That's such a good point, Jerry. And what I was talking about with the last person is, we talked about like GitHub, all of the different places where you can show off your additional experience, that they can go log into these open source platforms and see the type of work that you're doing from a project perspective. Also, from if you're entry level, one of the things that we just talked about is your resume having that coursework. So yes. Don't reinvent the wheel. Your coursework is the project that you worked on, for a year or for 6 months or for the semester. So you want to highlight that on the resume. And that's another area where hiring managers will take note, knowing that you're entry level, knowing that you're a college student, and just now getting your feet wet. So that's another add-on.
What about for those that are helping in the community, helping their local church, their local YMCA? How do you highlight that?
I like to put that in an interest, unless it's specific to the job that you're looking for. So if you're looking for cybersecurity role and you're helping the YMCA as their volunteer cybersecurity person, that is experience. So you want to put that in and you want to highlight all the things that you're doing like it's a job. And it is a job. They're just not paying you. But if you are, doing something at the church, if you're part of, helping to build houses or clean up trash on the highway or whatever other kind of volunteer work, that's part of an interest section at the bottom to show, just your other experiences outside of your, your quote unquote day job. And what I like about those interests is that if you could be talking to a hiring manager that's doing the same thing. So they could also be a part of, an organization that, what's the organization? Habitat for Humanity, for example. If they are, and they work or they have built houses for Habitat for Humanity and you've built houses, then that's another connection point. So they're like, oh, wow, you did this, I did this, another, area for you to talk to them about. But if it's actual cybersecurity experience and stuff, you want to put that in the highlight of like experience on your resume.
100% agree. If I could go on a slight tangent to that. So if you're either entry level trying to break into cybersecurity, or you've got other IT related skills and experiences and want to move to cybersecurity, and you're already part of an organization, a great strategy to break in can be to try to lat move or try to pick up responsibilities in that space. I'm old enough to remember when cybersecurity was all IT before it was its own distinct career path. And that's the way almost all of us got started in cybersecurity, is they're in some were usually systems engineering or something on the infrastructure side of the house. And they moved over, to cybersecurity as that became its own distinct career path. And that's still a very valid way. I was speaking to someone just last week inside one of the giant financial services companies in the country. And she was more on the project management side and managed to move all the way across and up to a BISO level inside that organization by doing just that, taking additional responsibilities and taking the work that needed to get done that they didn't have people to do as a way for her to move across to that place.
So Jerry, Chris Zart has a great question. One thing, I'm not entry level. I have years of experience with transferable skills. I'm just quote unquote entry level in the cybersecurity space. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, well, it depends what you're trying to accomplish. The hard truth is, while your overall experience will help you, you have to have the ability to do the role. So it may be a situation where you take a step down and then a big step up in making that transition across. But I suspect that you're going to have to take at least a step down for a period of time in order to develop the experience in that particular role, and then utilize your overall experience to springboard faster up than what somebody who lacked that overall background experience would have.
I would add in too that almost what Jerry was just talking about, how the person made like the lateral or picked up work. A lot of times people tend to look outside of their organization, when I'm always a huge fan of trying to get that experience or trying to get hired within. So Chris, if you're in a role and it's not securities in particular, but somewhere in your organization, they have that, you want to volunteer to do something to help out in the security space, to get that, touch point, to get that experience, to get those leaders to see you as someone who could be in one of their roles. And to Jerry's point, it could be a little bit of a step down. They might not make you an exact lateral, but it's an easier way than trying to go outside to another organization if you're currently working. So. Yeah,
I often tell people when they ask me, what's important when you're trying to move across, the very first thing to safeguard is your reputation. The second thing is your professional network. To Renee's point, you've already got a reputation in your organization. Somebody's far more likely to give you take a chance on you because they already know you're a known quantity from a work perspective, and from a reputation perspective. A new skill is just one out of many things. So I couldn't agree more.
You mentioned new skills. What are some of the new skills that you're seeing employers are asking for these days that a lot of those that are just coming in might not have?
I'll tell you, to jump on Chris for a second, it's the ability to communicate. So you're seeing a lot of folks post. I've seen it. Gosh, this last week, several posts from very, very senior cybersecurity folks about how cybersecurity is not technology, and our ability to get great security in an organization is largely our ability to sell people inside the organization on the importance of security. Heck, the most frequent way into an organization hasn't changed: social engineering. It's the same as it's been since we used to call it freaking. You know, I mean, it's the same thing. So the ability to communicate instead of enforcing by mandate is huge. Not only to be able to articulate technical concepts to business stakeholders, but also also the ability to influence, so that people understand what's in it for them and why they should do this thing, and how cybersecurity is a business problem and it's tied to revenue. The more effectively we do that, the more positively impacts our efforts.
Chris, we can't
What
hear
are
you.
your thoughts on James's question?
It was
About
inevitable. That's what I thought.
leveraging AI. So where do you draw the line, right? Sometimes AI kind of embellishes things because it knows that's what the reader is looking for. Where do you draw the line on the AI created cover letter or resume to make sure that you're not lying too much?
As somebody who's not a fan, let me be super upfront about that first. I think that large language models in their current stage and iteration are useful for first drafts, to give you an idea and a template and a place to spring from. The thing that still happens is they still lie convincingly. By that, I mean they are still erroneous with confidence. So you've got to be super careful. And I know Chris was saying it tongue in cheek to be funny. You can stretch the truth a little bit in a resume, but a lie that gets you a job is a lie that's going to get you fired. So I would be cautious, I guess, is the answer I'd give. First drafts for me and nothing more.
I'm with Jerry on the first drafts. So to get it started, to sometimes it's so hard just when you're trying to write a resume, when you're not. And I always say this: technologists are not resume writers.
Right.
And I get it when you don't even know where to begin. So to say, to ChatGPT, create a resume for me with blah 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 experience, that's great, but after that, you really want to comb through and make sure that it's a viable resume, and to your point, not a completely somebody else's whole resume when it's printed out. So that's definitely, I'm with Jerry. I don't even have anything else to add on that.
Yeah, James McCogan followed up that we're aware that there's AI hallucinations and to use it just as a support mechanism, but not to replace it totally.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say that they can feed your large language models with your information. # watch out for the privacy concerns to avoid the lies, but still it's difficult to get past the blank screen with the cursor. It's a start,
Right.
but not the final result. Exactly.
100%, James. And if you're afraid of privacy concerns, don't read the updates to your Google privacy stuff, because they're basically giving themselves a blank check to input everything into their large language models. So if anybody ever saw the 90s movie Ex Machina, which is fairly adult, the premise was they built a robot and they used for all of her AI inputs, essentially a combination of what was their fictional version of Twitter and Google. And starting to feel a lot more like Skynet every day.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
So, from the recruiter side, what are the challenging roles that employers are demanding, but you can't seem to fill?
For me, it's a combination. Either they're more junior roles that read like mid-level roles. That's still a fight that I think
Yes.
is never going to end. I'd like an entry-level SOC 1 analyst who has a CISSP, a master's degree in cybersecurity, and 5 years of experience and speaks 3 languages. That and the other a little bit of a challenge are the senior leadership roles that are what I call a tweener role, where it's part technical lead, part business person, where they're looking for that individual who can help them to, manage all of the project load, but also be client facing and help them sell projects. Those can be a bear.
And that's
Right?
because a lot of times that's because, you know, either the company doesn't have the budget, or it's really should be two roles, like a forward facing and a backward, and a more technical role, but they don't have the budget, so you're trying to squeeze out a little bit of either one. um, for me, it's always usually in that architecture space. Those tend to be the ones that are still, in demand and needed. The folks with the really technical expertise. I've been, looking around a little bit at stuff like prompt engineer, since you get those, read the articles and you see like all of these AI related roles, that people don't really have the experience yet, or they're just, they're now budding, getting that experience. Those haven't really popped into my feed yet. Like, I haven't gotten roles that I need to fill in that space, but I'm keeping an eye out in regards to those, because they are so uh, look like they're lucrative. The ones that I see posted are saying that they pay a lot of money, and obviously they would be, because a lot of people do not have that experience yet. So.
Now let's talk about this. Since you brought up salary, what are the challenges with salary and salary negotiations right now?
I will say one thing for sure. LinkedIn talking about layoffs is not helping anything. So I'm sure all of the layoffs are real. Obviously, nobody's going to lie about that. But IT and cybersecurity are still under 3% unemployment nationally. So that's statistically fully employed. For mid and senior level folks in the cybersecurity space, there's still more people than roles. In the junior category, entry level stuff, not the case, but in the mid to senior, yes. So it's funny. I've been in talent acquisition for 23 years, and whenever there's a shift in the market, there's this attitude that everything's different now, and it's just not the case. So I will say salaries less than the pushback on remote. So a lot of companies are looking for hybrid, and they're moving their offices to hybrid or back to hybrid. And hybrid isn't remote. So if your company needs somebody to be in the office 1 day a week, that's not a remote job. And people still have to live close enough that they can do that. So that's been a source of challenge for me, is people starting to move back to that in the office and hybrid. And then when they realize they can't, after a week of us beating our face into a wall, they take that part out, and we go back to all the candidates who said no the first time and then present them.
So with that being said, are they still paying to move candidates across the country, because now they can only find them in talent pools that are not close to their headquarters?
So not yet. So I don't want to make it sound like this comes up every 15 minutes with me, but so far, every time that it has come up, they've just accepted that this is going to be a remote role. So one of the companies I was working with a lot last year, internationally recognized management consulting company, they had a rule that everyone had to live within 60 miles of their whichever office they were assigned to, even if they didn't go into the office at all. And they would leave the role like that until they just couldn't fill it. And then rather than give up on it, then that specific individual could get dispensation to be truly remote. And it was a bear because in that particular instance, they had very specific needs. Their interview process was already very long. And by the time we got that special dispensation, gosh, that person was ready to retire from another job. So.
What about you, Renee?
In regards to, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
In regards to moving, like, so they're looking for someone in DC, but they can only find someone in San Francisco.
I haven't really seen the relocation packages recently that, were bustling. Maybe I wouldn't even say bustling because people, they'll do it for a certain level of candidate. But I haven't seen that recently. And to Jerry's point, in regards to, it'll be like, okay, let's do a remote situation. The person can come on site, once a quarter, once a month, something like that, where to Jerry's point, where he said it's a real remote, like, hybrid, one day a week in the office isn't remote. You have to be within a certain location. So I haven't really seen a lot of the relocation packages. In regards to the salary component, Jerry is right on the money, where it's like, you see layoffs, and sometimes companies will try to say, well, people are laid off, but their mortgage is still the same. You're not going to drop down. Even the conversations I've been having with some of the leaders that I've spoken to that have gotten laid off or are looking for opportunities, when you're looking at different industries, for example, financial services tends to pay really well. And some of these other areas, not as much as, still good, but just not as much as financial services. So it's like another, they may have the opportunity, but the funding, the salary isn't the same that it would be in a financial services space. So there's conversations around, do you want to try to wait? And this is like to a candidate, because you want to wait and see if you could get something else in the arena for the compensation, or look at something in a different industry that they're hiring right now, but the compensation could be a little bit lower. So, those are the conversations that are being had in regards to folks who, especially ones that are being laid off, because why would you're not going to quit your $250,000 job and take one for $175. That's not.
So, last question for today: why do you think there's such a pushback on remote roles?
Let me run upstairs and grab my tinfoil to make my hat before I answer that question.
I mean, there's some things that I've seen. I know, and Jerry and I probably been in this game probably around the same duration of time. I mean, I remember, oh Lord, working at Fortune 50 company and begging to get people remote because it was so difficult trying to fill these cybersecurity positions that would sit open for 9 months. And I would push back and say to the company, and I was an internal recruiter at that time, like, what are we doing? Do you need this role? It's been sitting open for 9 months. We have people who want to be remote. You don't want to do this. It was this whole big push and pull on remote. Another component, I think one of the aspects at that time was more around culture, coming into the office, the team, we want to be able to huddle, that kind of a thing. I think now, also with culture, right? Like people, when they started to get dispersed, it changed the culture a bit. And then, some people having multiple jobs. So, the company's finding out like, oh, you're a cybersecurity analyst here, and here. Like, this is not, we want to see you in the office. So I think those are, some of the pushbacks that I've seen in regards to remote. Like, and sometimes I had a leader, he said this all the time, that sometimes managers don't know how to manage with a remote team. Like, they're not efficient. like how, like the production component, right? If you know what you want from a manager and you know how much it's how long it's supposed to take, and it's project based or whatever, you can kind of gauge like, okay, this shouldn't take 6 months. This should take X amount of time or X, but some leaders don't have that. They don't know how. So they need to see the people. They want to, see that think that you're doing something different. So that's some of what I've heard in the past around remote.
Yeah. And I'll say this, we can't lose sight of the fact that the remote revolution occurred because of the pandemic. So a lot of the roles that went remote really didn't work great in remote capacities. So those came back. Managers now have had enough of a data set to see what works and what doesn't. So some of them are making those database decisions. Alas, I think the biggest thing is social media. We make fun of kids all the time for TikTok trends, but let's not kid ourselves. There's LinkedIn trends too. So as soon as the first 3 or 4 or 5 big companies jump on and say, we're all going OTE, everybody return to the office, then everybody else thinks, oh, that's what I should be doing too. And they jump on that bandwagon. So I think that there's going to be a back and forth for a while until the marketplace figures out what roles work best remote. And frankly, companies decide what they can do. And one last quick thing I'll add. If you're a person just breaking in, if you're looking to advance quickly, if you're a junior person looking to try out other groups and pick up responsibilities like we've been talking about, you're best served to be in the office if you can. It might not be fair, but the reality is if I see Renee every day, we're far more likely to develop a relationship than if we talk on the phone twice a week. And that means that I'm more likely to give her a shot for something that's a stretch. And I'm a bad example because I'm a horrible person, but she'd be more likely to give me a shot, in something that I don't necessarily have experience in yet.
Very true.
Wow. Well, Jerry, Renee, thank you so much for joining us on this live AMA. I think we're going to bring back the live conversations whenever we have time to. So thank you both for joining us. Thank you, everyone else, for asking questions. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
nice to see you again, Renee.